Hello everyone, and welcome to another tutorial series. And in this next series that I'm starting up, I thought it'd be fun to kind of walk you guys through my entire process from start to finish of drawing one of my fan arts. So it'll kind of be like a culmination of some of the stuff that I've been releasing in tutorial videos. Some things I haven't released yet, such as like posing tutorials and clothing tutorials, but those will definitely be coming in the future. I just don't have time to do those right now, but I'm working on a fan art batch and I figure this might be kind of fun. So, first of all, only things to know, I'm using Clip Studio Paint. Of course, you can do this traditionally or you can use your own drawing program, it really doesn't matter. Right over here, I've just got my original layer here set at 30% opacity here. So that way, everything is nice and soft. I've got a color folder, which just has a blank page in there, and since we'll use that later. And then that separates my line art, which is at full opacity, from my construction lines, so that way I can never accidentally merge this to my construction lines and screw everything up. So first we'll just start with the construction lines, and just like in our other videos, I'm just going to use basic building blocks to establish my figure. And keep in mind that everything that we're doing on this portion you can be really loose with. We're just trying to get overall shapes and expressions, just going for overall sort of impressions of the lines that we want in the finished piece. So there'll be lots of sort of rebalancing and moving things around, so you can be kind of messy with it. It doesn't have to be perfect. So first I'll just start with a little basic head shape here, kind of clean up some of this unnecessary stuff. From there, we'll establish our weight line. So in this pose, I've kind of got her sitting, like leaning over to her side a little bit, so that's probably too much of a swoop, but just for right now, just a really basic guideline just so I kind of know how the weight distribution of my character is going to be. And so since she's leaning that way, this shoulder is going to be up higher because she's putting her weight on this side. She's going to be supporting herself with an arm like that. So we'll do that. From here, since she's kind of at an angle, we just want to take our little rib cage shape right in here. Don't want it too big. Want it roughly the same size as her head, like so. And then this, so this is just our basic guideline here, so ignore that. And we're going to come up, so this is the front of her chest. Comes to about here. This is where the ribs sort of are, right there. From there, I'll add my little shoulder circles. I'm gonna bring this one out just a touch over here, and then this one's sort of tucked away. So from there, again, following this general swoop, I'm gonna slightly reposition it though, now that we kind of have our ribs in place. And then I'm going to make the hips here. And we kind of want these lines to almost pretend like they're intersecting here, so they're angled at each other. Since she's leaning off to the side, her hips are going to be pushed this way. And so this side of it is going to come up a little bit higher than this side, since all of that weight, is right here, but it's going to be pushing all of the mass that way. Right, since it's pushing against an unmovable object, so her body kind of has to slightly move out of the way of that. So, and again, we'll kind of be balancing and stuff as we go, so these general guidelines and shapes don't have to be perfect yet. So I'm just going to put in our little hip shape, bring it out a little bit further on this side. I'm going to mark off our unmovable portions here. This is all the hip bones, so that's not going to move. Then I will take this, going to Make it slightly bigger. Move it up so she's a little bit shorter. And then from there, do this. And if it helps you, you can, you know, angle your page all you want. That can certainly be helpful for getting this to look right. So, you know, do what you need to do to help you line everything up. Do that. Alright, so from there, we know that this is, you know, right here is where our ribs kind of are, and this is also everything on top of her tummy. So, you know, this is her chest, and her stomach's going to be over here. So, instead of following our little guide swooping line here, we are going to bring her stomach bump right there. It kind of meets right there. And it has a little pudge here. So since she's bent, we want this portion to be kind of scrunched, right? So we're gonna make a pretty exaggerated hourglass shape right there that connects to the hips. Since everything's gonna be moved up and in a little bit. Whereas on this side, we want it to be a little bit more stretched looking. So it's not gonna be as exaggerated of like a pinch like this, but instead it's more of a swoop like that, okay? Since this side is stretching more than this side. So we will stretch that out. We're gonna add our little tummy lines here, just so we know what's going on. I'm gonna bring this hip area down a little bit. Like so. Then from there, we can throw in our arm. Now we want this arm to be supporting her weight, so I'm going to really keep it tucked into her body, so that way it looks like it's actually able to bear weight. Then we want to add her arm, followed by the shoulder line, which I like to just connect the collar right to the shoulder line. This shoulder, you know, we're going to mess with a lot because it's going to be kind of tucked off to the side. So we can put in our bicep, give a really gentle curve for the forearm, like so. And then from there, I think what I will do is just enlarge her body a little bit. I don't want her to look super young in this fan art. I want her to be a little bit older than what she is in the show, or in the manga. So I just don't want her to look like she's, you know, too compact. Like, if you're trying to make her look younger, then you can just make her head bigger, essentially. That way she's less head height tall. But for this, I don't want her to look young, really. Then I'm gonna put in my little neck here. And so for this, since the shoulders, you know, are angled like this, they're higher right here than they are over here. And so because of that, just like on our sides down here, you know, this side where the hips are kind of getting close to the ribs is going to be scrunched. Whereas over here where they're all stretched out because they're further apart, that same rule applies for our neck. So right here, this distance is further than here. So her neck right here is going to be scrunched a little bit more. So her traps, which is this part right here, is going to be up a little bit higher. Whereas on the opposite side, it's going to be a little bit more stretched out. So just kind of mess with the balance until you get, you know, the shape that you want. So it looks like she's, you know, stretched out a little bit on the side where she's not scrunched together here. So from there, we can add her chest. I'm going to add a line just so I can see. This is where the breasts will start. And we're going to give her some small ones. So for this, I'm just going to start with the boob furthest from us. And then I'm just, because we want her chest relatively small, I'm not going to put too much detail in the lines for her chest, but I'm basically just going to suggest that it's there. So, something like that. Although this one's kind of getting away from us. There we go. And so we'll mess with those a little bit more too. It's okay if her ribs are showing through here just because of the angle we're at. So we don't, since she's got a small chest, you know, we don't need her breast covering all that section there. So it's okay if we see some ribs there. I'm gonna put that like so. Alright, from there, I guess we can get her legs situated, which I think for this I'm just gonna move her over just a little bit so we can kind of put our legs in, and then we can reposition her as needed. So for this, I'm imagining she's kind of sitting with her legs, you know, like this. So her knees are going to be closer to us than, you know, her hips. So what I like to do is we'll start with a general guideline and then put in rather large knee circles. And I'm going to kind of put it so that this knee on top is also up a little bit more. So you'll kind of see what I mean once we draw in our leg shapes. But from here, just going to put in the thighs. So I'm going to follow this shape, like so. And I just kind of want this swooping angle, so it's kind of like the hips right here, and then it pudges out to the thigh, because since she's sitting down, you know, all of her thigh and glutes are going to be kind of pushed out, so it's going to look a little bit more rounded than if she was just, you know, standing there. And then, same with this. And just remember, since the knee is pushed towards us, and, you know, I'll have some tutorials coming in perspective and for shortening and things like that later, but for right now, since her knee is coming towards us, we don't want there to be a huge disparity in the thighs here, where it's like, you know, in our regular tutorials where she's standing, you know, the thighs are going to be thickest at the top, but since the knee is so close to us, her knee is going to appear large, and so because of that, you're not going to quite see such a sharp contrast of, you know, thick thigh to a skinny knee, but it's just going to be a little bit more subtle. And again, in this construction portion, we can really mess with all of this as much as we need to make it look right. So if it looks a little bit off right now, there's nothing wrong with that, because we're just going to mess with it as we go. We'll put this like this, and I'm just going to connect these shapes like so. Because since her legs are bent a little bit, we can shape them like this, and now we're just going to make like this shape here. So her calf is right here, and it's going a bit behind her, so now her feet are going to be further away from us, and so because of that, we are actually going to exaggerate how small it gets at the ankle. So it's what we just did for the knee, but opposite. So we want to really keep the calf rather large, and then really shrink down the further it gets away from us, and that will help give her some depth. So I'll do that. From there, I'm just going to enlarge my character. I want her to basically fill this little page that we've got. So I'll move her over a little bit. Probably keep her like this. Her feet will be kind of cut off, but I want the main attention of the viewer to be drawn, you know, to her, you know, head and her body, and so if the feet get cut off because of our page size, I'm not that upset about it. And so from here, just a quick rebalancing I want to do. So I'm going to scrunch the stomach up a little bit more, like so. And again, that's the nice thing about the construction lines is you can just rebalance as you go. And, of course, if you're working on the line art and you see that your balance is off a little bit, you can make corrections. But for the construction lines, we can just afford to be super, super loose and just focus on getting the shapes that we want. So now I'm going to work on the hand. So first, just imagine that her knuckles are basically pointed straight towards us. I'm just drawing a little oval shape to help me visualize that. And then from there, I'm drawing a little section where our thumb knuckle is. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we just want to draw in some little finger shapes. Gonna have her pointer and middle finger kind of next to each other. And then same with the pinky and this other finger here. And Nezuko's got claws. So we're just gonna put those in. And then we'll give her a thumb, which at this angle, this is like the pad of the thumb. So you'd see her nail from just behind it. Like so. And again, we can mess with this hand all we want. So we'll make it just a touch bigger, rotate it. There we go. And then I will just make sure that her hip isn't a real sharp angle here. I want her to be relatively soft looking. Then we'll move that like so. Alright. So from there, I think we'll position her other arm kind of like so, hanging off the side here. So I'm just going to make her forearm first, and then I'll connect that like so. And again, this shoulder is angled away from us, so we're not going to see as much of it as we do on this shoulder over here. So I'm just going to kind of keep it tucked away behind her chest. And then make a little hand shape here. This one we'll just have sort of tucked away. Like so, with her little claws. And we'll just barely see the thumb knuckle, I think. So we'll just kind of do that. But we're not going to really see her thumb. Alright, and from there, just add some simple feet shapes, like so. We got like her big toe and the rest of her toes. And again, it's okay if her feet are out of frame for me. I'm not that worried about it. Just because, again, I want the sort of center of focus to be like right here. So I'm okay with positioning her feet off to the side a little bit. If we really wanted to, we could just move her over, but then that feels like all of the focus is shifted over here, which I don't really want. I want to keep her somewhat centered. So I'm even gonna scoot her over just a little bit. Like that. Just because I don't want her to be so off to the side. Especially because I don't think I'm going to give her like a real detailed background. So this would just be a bunch of empty space. So the less empty space we have, the better. Alright, so from there we've got our basic figure. And now, you know, typically what I would do is I would take a step back and then come back to this project a little bit later, just so any rebalancing and corrections would jump right out at me. But for the sake of just getting the construction lines done in one recording, I'm just going to go ahead and start mapping her clothes and her features. So from here, you know, I just have a Nezuko reference up to the side, so I have an idea of what she's wearing. So I think we'll just start up here at her face. So we'll start with her little bamboo mouth guard, like this. And so because of her angle, we'll slightly see the flat side of the piece away from us. She's kind of turning her head towards us. So we'll drop in our little bamboo shape. And then that's kind of what's holding it there. Then her nose, just a little tiny mark there. And for her eyes, she has pretty rounded eyes that kind of come up in a little bit of a point at their peak. So do something like that. And we can adjust the overall size of the eyes all we want, because these are probably too big, but that's okay. So, just trying to keep it close enough to the original character design that you know who I'm drawing, but still trying to put my own style into it, so it's not just a carbon copy. So because of that, a really good way of doing that is to keep the eyes pretty similar to the original artist style here. Because a lot of the eyes in Demon Slayer are quite round. So I want to keep that for this. Shrink this one a little bit more. And again, these don't have to be perfect in the construction line portion, because we'll make sure they're good in the line art. So, I want her kind of looking off to the side a little. And she's got really big irises here, so we'll just put those like so. This one is not as rounded as I want. That. And I'm just going to give her 2 eyelashes, a little bit on the bottom, like so. And then we'll give her very high eyebrows up here. And this is kind of marking where the eye socket is. So we're just going to put these little lines beneath the eyebrow, our little eyelid lines like so. Then from there, just take this, rotate it a little bit, like that. From there, draw our ears. Like that. This one's a little bit bigger. So she's kind of turning her head. So that's why everything's going to be a little bit different here. So like, for example, like her body is kind of turned, her body is turned that way, but her head is turning more towards us. So because of that, I'm going to keep like this ear here kind of, you know, smaller and off to the side. So this ear is going to be more at the forefront, and same with this eye. Like this eye will have more space separating here, because since she's turning her head a little, the perspective of her facial features are going to be slightly different. Like she's not looking straight at us, but she's also not looking in the direction of her body, which is kind of pointed, you know, off in that direction, kind of at an angle. So because of that, we don't want her to be perfectly symmetrical in her facial features, but we just want to keep that in mind while we're drawing her face and just try to balance everything so it looks right. Then again, the little string things here. So Nezuko's got a lot of her forehead showing, so I'm just going to kind of map that out like so. And that's part of why we can leave our eyebrows so high, is because since she's got a lot of her forehead exposed, you've got a lot of room to play with. So I want her to have like a generally happy demeanor. And so because of that, giving her some high, happy looking eyebrows will assist in that. And then from there, again, I'm just referencing the little picture of her that I've got pulled up. So we will give her hair the sort of parts right here. Looks like she's got a piece that's going to come like so. And the hair in Demon Slayer is really unique, so it's fun to draw, but it presents its own series of problem solving and challenges, because it's got some real stringy, sort of blocky, almost, shapes to it. So we're going to sort of capture that with some of these strands. But then the main mass of her hair behind her will just be kind of in one piece. So again, we can file this here. Remember, her hair is going to be thicker than her skull, because it's laying on top of it. So we don't want it super ultra thick, but want it to look like there's volume to it. So again, so this is like what's behind her here. So that's like the main mass of her hair. But then she's got a little hair tie that looks kind of blocky too, so we'll put that like that. From here, similar to what we just did, add sort of a blocky hair strand. I'm going to have this laying over her breast here, so it kind of goes behind her rather than, because I don't want it in the front like this, because then it's just going to cover up her chest. So put this like that, put in another sort of blocky piece. Found a third one. So it looks like from the reference I've got that she's got on each side like 3 of these kind of blocky hair strands that go off to the sides. So something like that. From there, she's got like a thick covering here, like a cloak almost. I don't know the traditional name for it, so I apologize. No clue what this is called, but she's got it on, so we'll have this cloak-like thing sticking off. She's got loose arms, so for this, you know, if she was wearing tighter clothes, we'd really want to, you know, follow the shape of her arm and like give it some nice wrinkles there, but because this is such a thick piece of clothing here, like kind of thick and loose, and it's like a thin material, we don't want to over exaggerate the clothing folds and wrinkles on it because it's so loose. It's, you know, it's bending around her body, it's not just floating, but it's not so constricted by the body and being compressed that, you know, it's just not going to have tons and tons of folds like what you might see in like form-fitting clothing. That's going to be a little bit more exaggerated with your folds as you go. And then again, since it's kind of an open shawl, it's kind of off to the side here, so it's not going to really cover her chest. And then we'll add the other sleeve. So in this position, since, you know, the angle of her arm is not just straight down, it's actually going to be resting on her arm right here. And so because of that, we're going to keep this pretty much on her arm, but then all of the extra material is just going to kind of be coming off to the side, or off beneath it. So we'll kind of just bring it up like this. So, and we can add a little bit of folds here where some of the extra material is sitting. Let's see, so sleeve. From there, just have it kind of sitting behind her. And again, in the construction lines, it might be a little bit hard because, you know, everything's stacked on top of each other, but you're just trying to make shapes that you can follow and lines to connect in the overall line art portion. So as long as you know what you're drawing, then it'll be better, but try to keep this somewhat clean so you guys can follow along easy. But anyway, so we got her little shawl thing done. Now she just needs her kimono, which I think what I will do is I'll start with this little piece here. So she's got like a checkered section right here. So I'm gonna put that in along with the ropes here, little string tie, like so. And then she's got a little green padded cloth here so it doesn't hurt her to wear it, because this is like a relatively tight thing. So we've got some padding there. From there we can draw in the kimono, which is kind of wrapped around her like so. This is the overall shape of it. And it looks like she's got a little thing beneath it here. So, I mean, this part in the original character design is relatively, like, pretty much just up on the neck. So I'll just bring that up a little bit. And right here, we don't want it to just be a straight line coming across, because remember, she's got a boob here. So we kind of want this line to follow the shape of the breast and then wrap around. So you're just trying to remember what the shape of the body is going to be beneath your clothing. And so because of that, we kind of want it to follow along and not just move independently of what's going on beneath her clothes. So we'll put that like that. From there, she's got, I guess this part of her kimono basically comes down, not quite to her ankles, but pretty close. But for the sake of this, I think I will just bring it around her knees, like so. And then it'll kind of wrap around, because that'll help us then just put in like her calves and stuff, because we'll have something to kind of hide the connecting portions of her actual leg to. So like if we didn't have something here like this clothes fold to sort of hide this section, then you'd have to map out, you know, exactly what that fold looks like with your knee and everything, whereas we can kind of save ourselves the trouble by just drawing in the knee. And then behind that, she's got like that like the fold from that different texture where her kimono sort of opens up, and then we can just drop her calf behind it. So it'll just kind of help it, or it'll help us balance everything and make it look a little bit nicer without having to problem solve a semi-technical angle there, which is good to practice, but because of the design of her clothes, we can kind of make it easier on ourselves. So that's what we're going to do. Alright, so we've got that, and from here, we'll definitely have some folds here, kind of where her thighs come together. But for right now, you're not going to really see that in our construction portion. And then it looks like over the lower portion of her legs here, she's got, I don't even know what this would be called, but if you look at a picture of Nezuko, you'll see what I'm seeing. I have no idea what this is called, but just kind of these thick material kind of tied on a little, it looks like. So we'll just stack those in, which again, for this pose, is actually nice, because then we can kind of just get away with stacking them behind each other. It'll kind of help us accentuate the foreshortening, because it's kind of done in like blocks almost. So we'll have some of the little white tie things visible, like so. Just bring this thigh out just a little bit. Oops. I clicked my pen button to go back to the actual pen, but it stayed at the eraser. Alright, so from there, she's got an interesting pattern on her kimono. I think I'm just going to save that for the line art, just because if we put that in right now in the construction portion, I think it's just going to make it really messy looking and hard to follow along, because there's certain details that I don't want to miss on the clothes that she's wearing. Just like the overall lines and shapes of it, and the differences in materials and things like that. So I don't really want to throw in a bunch of extra lines to follow and try to remember what they are. So we'll add this here, because she's got like some long socks underneath these sort of darker puffy material, so I'll just have those cut off right there, so we just see a little tiny bit of her thigh. And there we go. So I think I'm happy with that. Okay, that was crazy what just happened. I will take all of this, enlarge her a little bit. Again, I just want it to fill my page a little bit better. Just trying to position her so she's not way off to the side. So again, it's cutting off more of our legs, but that's fine. Because again, if I was drawing like a detailed background, then I'd probably just have her entire figure shown, so like her feet included. But because I'm not, I'm doing a simple background just for the sake of showing you guys, the character and how to draw it. Because of that, the more empty space we have, the more noticeable that empty space is going to be. And so I'm trying to minimize that while still keeping with our pose. So it's okay if the main center of attention is, off to the side like this, but if it's way over here in this section, then it's just going to be kind of weird. It doesn't feel natural. It almost feels like when you look at the picture, you feel forced to look just off to the side of it, and it's kind of jarring. So, but either way, I'm pretty sure this is good for the construction lines, so I'll just take a step back and review it, make sure that I like the balancing and the proportions of it. It's a lot harder to catch those things while you're drawing, and even harder while you're talking. So I'll take a step back and review that, and then we'll move on from there. So hopefully you found this helpful, and I will see you in part 2 of our Nezuko series.